Hello and welcome. Okay, we are here again. Wanted to thank you for staying tuned. We had a little server glitch, so if that happens, just stay on the Facebook page and refresh, and we'll come back as soon as we can. So welcome to this week's edition of Cognition's BCI Connection. I'm really excited to bring our guest Joel Ward on with us because he is the guy that is getting all of the cool tech stuff first, or as close to first as he can get. So let me bring him on.
Hello.
All right, here we go. We're going to try this again. It's take two, and I'm sure it's going to be great. So welcome, Joel.
Thank you for having me.
All right, we're going to get right to it. Can you tell us a little bit about your title of technology strategist? Because it's a little bit general, but I know that there's a lot wrapped into that.
Yeah, so I use that title because I do a little bit of everything, and my background is a little bit different than I'd say most people's. So right now I do more strategy. I look at different technologies, I try things out, and I apply them to certain situation scenarios, come up with the new ideas. But how I got here, I originally was going to be an architect when I was a child. I had a Lego city, and actually I'm looking at it over here. My son now works on it in our basement here in our house in Virginia. Moved it from Maryland to Virginia, and it'll probably move again at some point. But I went to school for architecture, realized that I didn't want to be an architect per se, but the concept of architecture is really what I've applied ever since. So I actually made my own degree at that point. I switched out of the architecture program to become a web developer, which did not exist in the 90s because the web was new and there weren't degrees for web development or that kind of programming and design. So I used all the design I got, and then also did the tech side. And that has sort of set the stage for everything I've done since, where I've always been the person in between the designers and the real deep tech side of the equation. And I would build websites. Then I eventually got into content management systems like SharePoint, if you've ever used that, or Salesforce. And then a couple of years ago, we opened our innovation center in my company. I do consulting, and we opened an innovation center. And I got involved with then a wide variety of tech, including XR, extended reality, AR, VR, if you've heard of that before. So big focus since then has been XR. But throughout this whole thing, I've also been involved with accessibility since the web. Back in the 90s, the web was new and accessibility was not really built into it. And then things like the W3C and Section 508 came out. We're doing now the same thing with XR. So point is that this background of lots of different things leading up into this work with XR is then coming back to things like accessibility. And that's why I call myself a technology strategist, because I'm looking at it from a lot of different perspectives, not just one. I'm not just a programmer, not just a designer. I'm looking at it across the spectrum.
Excellent. Can you expand on the acronym XR?
Sure. So XR is the current term the industry uses for what is called extended reality or cross reality. Most people probably have heard the term VR, virtual reality, AR, augmented reality, and there's also MR, mixed reality. It's essentially the ability to put on a pair of goggles for the most part and take you to somewhere else, and that's virtual reality. And then augmented reality is saying put on a pair of glasses and augmenting what you're seeing with virtual content. So instead of looking at a screen like we're doing now, you can use something like a Microsoft HoloLens, which is a giant pair of glasses that overlays three-dimensional information on your view.
Awesome. So a lot of people have been asking me, May, how are you getting all these amazing guests on this, Cognition Facebook Lives? And I say, I really cold call them on LinkedIn, which is unbelievable, but that's how we met. So I just want to thank you and tell people that it works. But, when you want to impress somebody, you dress to impress. So I want to show our audience what I wore the first time we met, because I really wanted you to see that doing this with me would be valuable. So here we go. You ready?
Yep.
So this is how I showed up to our meeting. Remember that?
Yep.
I wanted to be cool, and just for everybody, this is the Oculus Quest. This is the second edition. And since my family and I got this, it has been unbelievable in our lives. And it's also helped me with the company cognition for what we're doing there. But I also have loved tech forever. I am a speech language pathologist, as you know, and I love technology and what it can do. And I love hearing your story. Nowadays with Legos, you start out with like a box, like I can create the Friends coffee house, right? Like
Right,
there's
right,
no real imagination there.
right.
But yes, it's fascinating when people put their interests and their hobbies, together with a lifelong career and purpose. So I love this story, Joel. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. And I see something white up there behind you, and I
Yep.
have a little bit of envy.
Yep.
What is that?
So this is the Oculus Quest II. So you have the one there, and this is the two that just came out. Oculus is really pushing forward with their VR. So it's a VR headset. But what's interesting about this one, it actually bridges over into augmented reality, because you can see these little things, and yours has this as well. The cameras that are used for the sensing of the room and the virtual space can also be used as augmented reality cameras, and they're black and white.
Oh.
So, and you can actually do this with yours as well. There's a mode where you can go into the Oculus menu and you can actually see your room in black and white with the menu overlaid on it. And there's actually Oculus is working on this, as well as some of the app developers, where you'll be able to eventually do that sort of. It's not full AR because it's not full color, but you can sort of merge your physical world with a virtual world with a VR headset, instead of using something like Microsoft HoloLens, which is the pair of glasses, right? So you can actually see these are like giant sunglasses. This technology is much harder to build. So this is very cool. The HoloLens is great, but it's also much more expensive. Whereas this is a couple $100s, and we could start doing some of that AR stuff that eventually will come down in price. So
Wow.
Again, the consumer side of this is VR, but there's the whole other side that they're really pushing the envelope on what you can do, and then bridging over into the enterprise and the corporate space and the government space. What else can you do with this kind of thing for things outside of gaming, right? And social.
That's awesome. Yes, and that actually brings me to my next question of what is new in this area. And we're saying BCI, but what's new in this whole area that you're seeing?
Yeah. So with AR and VR, like I said, the Quest is kind of pushing the tech forward. Again, bridging what many call mixed reality, where you're going between augmented reality and virtual reality, and that's the future that many of us see may come at some point, where you can have one pair of glasses, and they may look more like glasses, like standard glasses, that can do a fully virtual world or do an augmented world, depending on what you need to do, right? Because the difference is VR, you might want to do training or go visit another location, actually, which is great in the COVID times,
Wow.
right? Because we can't go anywhere, but you can put your VR goggles on. And my son does this, by the way. He puts it on, and there's a version of Google Street View. You can go anywhere in the world, right? Or Google Earth, and go see things, versus the augmented reality part, where you have the glasses on and maybe it's helping you with navigation, or what you guys are doing, where there's something that might help you with communication in one way or another, right? Where it's sensing something and helps translate it for you, or it can help you with text, not text translation, but also other steps or things like that. It can help you out. That's coming. But we can do it now. It's just mostly very expensive, or again, the goggles are gigantic. So all this is coming. The question is, who's going to get to it first? And then the other side of that is the sensors, right? So you mentioned BCI, brain computer interface, EEG, biosensors, and things like that. I do some of that for my job. We're looking at these kinds of things for our customers, but I'm very interested in it, especially things like the BCI and the eye tracking, for not only sensing. So, and use your Fitbit, right, for sensing your heart rate. And the Apple Watch now has a million other things you can do now to sense all your other health information. And there are actually the EEG headbands you can use for things like meditation, right? Like the Muse. You have stuff like that. Yeah. But how can you then use that not just for sensing and sort of stuff like meditation, but how can you use that to control something? So, like not reading your mind per se, but all using your mind as a switch, which is very fascinating to me, in part because my son has cerebral palsy, and he uses an iPad to talk now. So in which he's able to use an iPad to push the buttons. But first of all, it's slow going for many people, right? And this is a general issue with AAC. And also, not just for him, but for many others, they might have trouble pushing buttons, right? And so that's where this tech like the eye gaze, which already exists, but stuff like BCI is very interesting to me, which is why one reason I'm kind of focusing on this space, because I'd love to take the tech that exists now and really make it work for these new situations.
Right. I love that. So I'm going to bring you to the next question, which is what's next? And I see behind you, it's kind of blurry, but it's a certificate because you're a part of our Brainiac Council.
Yep.
And so thank you so much. And you kind of mentioned it a little bit here and there. So I appreciate that because I always want to be sharing that we are working on this amazing technology that interfaces brain-computer interface and augmented reality to create access to AAC. And we just began doing our headset assessments, and they have just been so phenomenally exciting and
awesome.
just so moving and emotional too. So what do you see as new in this technical space?
Well,
what's next? Moving ahead.
So what's next? For example, you were working on this kind of thing. I'm doing this for my job, where we're taking these different things that are separate now and putting them together. What's next is the combination of these things, right? How do you get them together in a form factor that is usable, which I think is hard with a lot of the sensors, especially the EEG kinds of sensors that are very hard to kind of manipulate on the head. How do you get that into something that someone can wear all the time, and then combine it with the display part, whether it's a phone or eyeglasses or whatever? That's a big part of what's next, because we have the tech, at least the pieces of the tech. We just need to merge it. The other part of it is the technology has to get smaller, lighter, and less expensive, right? And so that's what's next. And we're waiting for, like, especially on the eyeglasses part. There's talk. Facebook is working on this, obviously. Likely Google. Microsoft, obviously, with the HoloLens, and then Apple. Everybody's kind of looking at Apple. What's Apple going to do, right, with the glasses?
Yeah. Can I step you back though? Because I think that the people watching, we hear stuff like Facebook is working on this. So what would that look like, Joel?
You mean like what kind of product that's coming down the road? Yes. So, yes. I'm sorry. I do kind of live in this. Think about, this is a HoloLens now, right? This is big, but it's a full computer, by the way. So there's a whole computer in here, which is pretty impressive, that the computer and the battery and everything fits on your head, but it's also a computer on your head with giant glasses. And this is not something you would necessarily want to wear outside. Plus, they actually are still working on the outdoor vision part of it. So this is not really meant to replace your eyeglasses, but imagine this technology in here in a pair of glasses. Just look like your eyeglasses. That's where it's going. The question is, how soon can we get there to get it down to that form factor that looks like a pair of glasses, maybe a thick pair of glasses, but has similar augmented reality and holographic power that something like this that's much larger has, and also the battery life. So we're expecting those companies, the consumer companies, to really push it, likely along with Microsoft, which is working on the HoloLens. How do you get it down to like a pair of Oakleys or a pair of large glasses that might be paired with a phone? So maybe the computing power is on here, but you have glasses that can overlay information as you're looking at, and we're having this conversation. Instead of in front of a screen, I could actually have it with you as I'm wearing a pair of glasses anywhere.
That's so sci-fi. We've seen that in movies. I think of like Tom Cruise, and we've seen the kind of stuff where they're just checking their glasses. And so does that exist out there already in some form?
So the HoloLens is probably the HoloLens and the Magic Leap are the two big ones now that have the fully sort of holographic, with the ability to use either a controller, or actually HoloLens uses hand gestures, so you can interact with it, kind of like Minority Report in a way, but with a pair of glasses, right? So
he moves stuff.
We're doing that, and I mean that's the dream, right? Eventually, that you have a Minority Report kind of view where it's actually holographic without a headset. That's the dream, some sort of projection or some large screen. That's, I don't know, years or decades off at this point, but that's kind of where this is going. But there are glasses like Nreal Light, which is a smaller pair of glasses that has similar function to the HoloLens, but is going to be in, say, the $500 range for glasses that you pair with a powerful phone. That's, I think, where Apple and Facebook and Google will likely go as well. So glasses that might be in the range, higher end, $500 for a pair of glasses, but that can do this kind of thing with similar sort of visuals and some sort of way of interacting with it. And maybe with the sensors too, right? Because this also, it's not only the display, it has cameras and infrared on it for doing mapping of the space, so you can actually overlay things on it for augmented reality. And by the way, speaking of Apple, the new iPhone just came out. They're building this into their iPhones and their iPads. Those and same with Android, but Apple is really pushing it with something called LiDAR, which is basically a way to map a space and then overlay something on it, and that tech will end up in those headsets as well. So your glasses actually know where you are and can overlay something on it. And then the bigger part of that is not only knows where you are, it can actually then share virtual things with other people in that same physical space. And that's the magic. And that exists now too in some ways, but there's a lot of pieces that have to come together for it to really be useful at a large scale.
Thank you so much. I love how you just got so excited too.
Yeah, no, as you can tell, it's very exciting. It's all technically possible. It's just more the cost and really just the usability of it, right? For the general population, because right now it's not necessarily easy to do.
Right. All right. I'm going to have Andreas pop on here. So Andreas Forsland is CEO of Cognition, and you guys know each other because you were an early supporter of SmartStones, where the Cognition started. And he's saying that we are seeing that CP is a great addressable population, a great fit for AR and BCI as we've been doing these assessments. He also wants to know if your son has had the opportunity to try the HoloLens.
He has, and actually he loves it. Actually, both my sons have tried it, but my younger son, the one with CP, I've actually had him test one of our apps from work, where basically he's been my tester. So yes, he's tried it and he loves it. He loves that, and by the way, he loves the VR, the Quest. As I mentioned before, he loves to go in there and not only go around the world, but also there's an elevator game on the Quest that he loves because he loves elevators. So he's all into all this. Yeah.
Yes, and you told me about that, and I wrote it down, and we need to do it. Yeah. So I haven't asked this in a while of someone, and my mom usually does comes onto my Facebook Live, so she's probably watching. But I am going to ask: do you have any room for adoption? Because I would love to be your kid and get to see all the tech that's coming in.
Yes, come on, move to the East Coast. You can live in our backyard. I'll set up a shed for you.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. This has been personal fun for me. Just want you to know. And again, I want to thank you for saying yes and hooking up on LinkedIn and really coming on and educating our audience on what's out there and helping us to understand how these things will come together in real life, how it's happening in accessibility. And then also thank you for being on our Brainiac Council, Joel. We're really excited to have you as part of our family.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
All right. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you.
Bye.
All right, everyone. Well, thank you for staying on with us. I have to say, I don't know what's going on with the initial stream. So now it's happened 2 weeks in a row. So I hope that next week it's nice and clean. But I want to thank you for staying on with us and waiting and letting you know that today's episode of Cognition's BCI Connection has been brought to you by the SpeakPros app, which offers an intuitive interface that allows people to express themselves using face and eye tracking technology on the iPad. If you want to find out more about this or get free professional access, contact me directly, or you can go to speakpros.com. Thanks so much for joining us and see you next week.